With a nickname like the Golden State, California is probably the last state you can imagine having dark urban legends. When most people imagine California, they think of hippies, surfers, beaches, and Hollywood. Yeah, some can be pretty weird, but not scary or spooky, right? Believe it or not, creepy California does exist, and today we will look at 10 of the many urban legends the Golden State has to offer. Long before Alcatraz prison opened its doors, housing some of the most dangerous and notorious criminals, the island was said to be haunted. Early explorers to the island described the land as being suppressed with a dark, heavy, disturbing atmosphere. Archaeologists that investigated the island found old native artifacts and bones buried deep on the ground, and they say that indicates the island was used by the Alone tribe as a burial ground for their outcast. By 1861, the island was called Alcatraz Citadel, which was a military defense and functioned as a war camp. In 1868, the Citadel became a long-term military prison, and in 1893, the first hospital opened, followed shortly by a new upper-level prison. The island continued to develop, and soon the Citadel stopped functioning as a military defense. After a lot of money was invested, Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary was opened in 1934. There are many ghosts that remain on Alcatraz, but perhaps the most famous is Al Capone, the most powerful crime boss in and around Chicago. Al was eventually caught and ended up serving 11 years in Alcatraz. During his time here, it is reported that he did at least 3 stretches down in the hole, a place to be considered pure horror and torture even for the baddest of bad. No privileges were allowed. Even talking wasn't allowed unless it was the allocated time. Musical instruments were allowed though, so Al would play his banjo for hours and hours in his cell 181 or in the shower. Although Al was released from Alcatraz, it is said he had already lost his mind and spent the remainder of his life in a hospital. Even though he died at the hospital, it seems he left his soul at the prison. Many rangers and visitors have reported hearing Al's banjo twanging in the showers as they walk through, and often feel unexplainable cold spots when they pass. His cell door is also reported to be swinging on its own. One visitor even reported that he felt someone touch the back of his neck, but when he turned around, no one was there. Henry Young, Arthur Doc Baker, and Rufus McCain attempted the impossible in January of 1939. They tried to escape Alcatraz. Things didn't go as planned for the trio, and Arthur was shot and killed by a guard. Rufus and Henry were sentenced to 22 months in solitary confinement, receiving only 2 small meals per day. Finally, when they were both free to return to their normal cells, they were given jobs in separate departments. Henry was working in the furniture section directly above the tailoring section where Rufus was working. Suddenly, something snapped in Henry, and he grabbed a spoon, ran down to where Rufus was, and stabbed him in the neck with the handle. Rufus went into shock for 5 slow, grueling hours before succumbing to his death. It is reported that his old solitary confinement cell, 14D, is unexplainably 20 to 30 degrees colder, and that his presence can still be felt here. A few years after Rufus died, he was accused of murder. Another inmate was occupying his old cell on D Block and saw a dark shadow with glowing red eyes. Terrified, he was left to scream all night locked into the cell with the entity. The next morning, he was found with unexplainable marks all over his body, purple-faced with bulging eyes. He was dead, strangled to death by an invisible entity believed to be Rufus. In 1946, the impossible was attempted again by 6 inmates: Bernard Corey, Marvin Hubbard, Joe Kreitzer, Clarence Carn, Sam Shockley, and Myron Thompson. Just after lunch, the men overpowered the guards and took their keys and weapons, while most of the other inmates were at their allocated industries and the cell block was empty. Of course, the plan to escape failed. Out of all the keys they had stolen, not one opened the door to the outside world. With nowhere to go, trapped in the utility corridor near cell block 3, Clarence, Sam, and Myron gave up, but Bernard, Marvin, and Joe refused to. Joe took the stolen gun and started shooting. The Marines were eventually called in, but the standoff lasted for 2 days, resulting in the death of 3 men, 2 guards, and left 17 others with serious injuries. According to reports, unexplainable bangs and other strange noises can still be heard behind the utility corridor door. When the door is open, all the noises stop. Then, when it's closed again, the noises start back up. Most, if not all, inmates are reported to have gone completely mad by the time they left Alcatraz. Along with the poor conditions and tortured punishments, they also had to deal with being tormented by ghosts. Many inmates reported to guards about hearing disembodied whispers throughout the night, right up close to them as well as all around them. Also reported were blue floating lights shimmering up the corridor. Other reports from inmates include apparitions floating through the corridors, muffled talking, and the clanging of keys, as well as doors slamming shut that were already shut. The inmates were not the only ones to have experiences with the supernatural here. Many, if not all, guards have experienced at least one supernatural event while at Alcatraz. There have been a lot of reports of hearing loud sobs from a lady and unexplainable cold spots. One guard reported seeing a group of Native Americans marching in circles, then suddenly disappearing. There are also reports of a ghost in A block of a 19th century military prisoner that, when approached, disappears. There are some spirits who are unseen, but make their presence known by letting off phantom cannons and shooting dead guns. Since its closing in 1963, people have had the opportunity to visit Alcatraz and experience the ghost for themselves. Now that the prison is empty, the ghosts have full run of the prison, and activity seems to have really picked up. There have been many reports of phantom footsteps, eerie moanings heard, as well as the sound of men talking in cell blocks A and B. Former inmate Abby Butcher Maldowitz is reported to haunt cell block C. A psychic medium described him as a very disruptive presence. One watchman swore she heard screams from down in the dungeons below cell block A. She thought it was a tourist that was trapped down there, and when she went to check, she found nothing. Another watchman reported walking all around him when nobody was there. Many tourists have taken pictures while visiting Alcatraz, and some have captured ghosts in their photos. Just south of Ojai in Ventura County is Camp Comfort County Park, which looks peaceful enough, but holds many spirits, the most famous being Char-Man. Near the bridge on Creek Road is a ghost of Char-Man, a hideous spirit that had been burnt beyond recognition, who emerges from the forest and attacks people on or near the bridge, whether they're in their vehicles or not. The legend has become so popular that the bridge is known by locals as Char-Man Bridge. There are reported to be 3 different yet similar stories of the origins of Char-Man. The first and second story is said to have happened in the 1948 fire. In the first story, the father and son got caught in the fire. Both were badly burned, but the father died before help could arrive, and the son went crazy from his injuries. By the time help was able to get there, the son had skinned his father of all the burnt flesh and hung his lifeless body from a nearby tree. The son then escaped into the woods where he was never caught. The second story says a husband and wife were caught in the fire. The husband, already badly burned, laid helplessly listening to his trapped wife yelling, "Help me," over and over until the fire consumed her. Eventually, the husband was able to move and took off into the woods, having lost his mind during the tragedy. The final story takes place in the 1950s and says there was a bad accident on the bridge and a car caught fire. The driver got severely burnt but somehow managed to escape into the woods. Char-Man is described as being covered in black, burnt, peeling skin, wearing charred bandages, and has a disgusting burnt smell. He is also reported to haunt Signal Street and Shelf Road. According to legends, if you stop your car on the bridge, get out and yell, "Help me, help me," Char-Man will come running out of the forest and attack. Turnball Canyon is a great hiking trail in Los Angeles County between Hacienda Heights and Whittier. It's a favorite place for many hikers, fitness gurus, and mountain bikers. The road is also a favorite place for racers. What many may not know is there is a more dark and sinister side to the canyon. Along with mountain lions and rattlesnakes, there is also a history of satanic rituals, ghosts, hangings, kidnappings, KK meetings, and even a gravity hill. There are even reports of UFO activity here. The Native American tribe, the Gabrielinos, believed the land was forbidden ground and called it the Dark Place, and later, the Place of the Devil. The local natives were forced into Catholicism by the Spanish, who would kill anyone who didn't convert. It is believed these events happened at Turnbull Canyon and is one of the many reasons for the hauntings here. There have been many reports of hearing what has been described as war drums throughout the canyon. John Rowland and William Workman immigrated to the area from Taos, New Mexico in 1845. They ran a fur trapping business there. Workman had helped Governor Pio Pico overthrow a governor that was not liked. In return for his help, Workman received 49,000 acres of land. The natives of the area didn't like Workman and would often attack his property, which caused Workman to dig underground living space to help protect his family. Eventually, the natives started working for him. It was then they started reporting seeing witches and ghosts through the tunnels that led to the family cemetery. Workman lost most of his 49,000 acres when he became involved in a plot to overthrow the governor who had given him the land. This led to Workman's financial downfall, and in 1876 he shot himself in the canyon. During the Great Depression, many families had to give up their children to orphanage because they couldn't afford to take care of them anymore. At the time, there was a cult in the area that would adopt the children and slaughter them in the canyon. The cult eventually turned to kidnapping for a time before mysteriously vanishing. Many people have reported that while they were out at Turnball Canyon at night, they saw hooded figures roaming the trails. Some people have reported seeing mysterious bonfires in the canyon, as well as seeing the ghost of children. In the 1930s, there was a mental hospital in the canyon that burned down in the 1940s. In 1962, there is a report that a group of friends were partying at the old ruins of the hospital. One of the boys came across an electroshock device that was once used. When he picked it up, he was electrocuted with a voltage strong enough to kill him. The strange thing is, the electricity had been shut off since the fire 20 years earlier. Most recently, in 2002, a girl named Gloria Gaxola was murdered in Turnball Canyon Road. She was shot to death and then dragged 4 to 5 miles down Turnball Canyon Road. Another incident here includes mysterious plane crash in the 1950s that killed 29 people. 21 of those are rumored to have been children. Some believe the spirits that were conjured up by the Satanists caused the crash. Then you have the hanging tree, where it is reported that a man who once was hung from the tree can still be seen today. During the day, Turnball Canyon is a quiet nature walk, but at night, all the hidden secrets of the canyon come alive. Apparently, the canyon is closed at night because of all that has happened here. Lake Elizabeth in Fremont, California, is an 83-acre man-made lake that was established in 1968. The area is an enchanting place to visit during the day, but venturing here at night, things become more sinister. Within a year of being constructed, the lake claimed its first victim. The locals of the area are not very forthcoming about what happened. In hushed tones, when they do tell what they know, they say a young woman's body was found floating in the lake. There were no marks on her body to indicate foul play, and her death remains a mystery today, with many believing it was a suicide and others alluding to something darker. The darker theory says that a young woman drowned as part of a ritual sacrifice. It is reported that the young woman can be seen on cloudy nights after midnight. She is reported to be seen on the eastern bank of the lake or on the small island within. It is reported that she does not interact with people, but simply walks back to the lake, arms spread wide, and her white dress flowing in the wind until she disappears in the water. The young woman in white is not the only spirit said to haunt Lake Elizabeth. Sometime not long after the Civil War, a little girl named Susan lived in the area. What little is known of Susan is that she was an evil little girl who abused animals and manipulated those around her. One day, Susan was said to have poisoned her neighbor's dog, and the man decided to take things into his own hands. In a fit of rage, he killed her. Susan was buried in the area that would become Lake Elizabeth. Susan was not mentioned again until after the lake was built, and animals began to disappear at a frightening rate with no obvious reason. It was soon after the reports of an evil, childish laughter could be heard at the lake. Most recent reports claim that a small girl with angry eyes and a dark, psychotic laughter has been seen and heard around the area. Peg Entwistle was born in 1908 in South Wales. When her mother died, her father moved the family to the United States and soon remarried and had 2 sons. Then tragedy struck the family again when Peg's father was killed by a car on Park Avenue. Peg's brothers went to live with an uncle, but 17-year-old Peg refused, wanting to stay and find fame and fortune in New York. Finally, she landed a job with the Boston Repertory Company and began work in the prestigious Theater Guild production of Broadway. In 1927, Peg married Robert Keith, a much older man who didn't share much of his past with Peg. She eventually found out about Robert, that he had been married before and even had a 6-year-old son what she never mentioned before their marriage. Deciding her marriage was a sham, Peg divorced Robert. Peg went back to acting in 1931, but by 1932, work had dried up and she started to slip into depression. She then moved into her uncle to make ends meet and even managed to act in a few plays, which were short-lived. Peg's luck finally seemed to be changing when she landed a role in the film 13 Women. Unfortunately, most of her parts were edited out, and her contract wasn't renewed, so that made Peg slip further into depression. On September 18, 1932, Peg left her uncle's home drunk and headed out towards the Hollywood sign. She reportedly left a suicide note in her purse along with her jacket, climbed the ladder to the top of the H, where she jumped to her death at the age of 24. The spirit of Peg has been reported many times since the tragedy, usually by hikers and rangers in the Griffith Park area. Reports say the ghost resembles a young, attractive blonde lady in a white 1930s style clothing, walking sadly around the area. It is also said that the smell of gardenias follows her around, and if smelled, Peg is about to make her appearance. Calico is an Old West mining town in San Bernardino County, California, and has been around since 1881, when the Silver King became the most profitable mine. By 1882, many businesses opened on the flat hills between Odessa and Wall Street canyons. The name Calico comes from the many colors found in the mountains of the area. By the mid-1880s, Calico's population was around 2,500 people, and the town had a school, several churches, a literary group, 24 saloons, and many gambling establishments. When the price of silver dropped to less than half of its value in the mid-1890s, the town was soon abandoned. It was temporarily brought back to life when a cyanide plant was built here in 1917, but that was short-lived. By 1935, the town was once again abandoned. Walter Knott bought Calico in the 1950s and restored all but 5 of the original buildings to look like they did in the 1880s. Calico received State Historic Landmark 782, and Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger proclaimed in 2005 that it was California's Silver Rush ghost town. Today, California is part of the San Bernardino County Regional Park System and visited by people from all over the world. Today, along with its history and attractions, Calico has shops, restaurants, and offers camping, hiking, and off-roading. In addition to the attractions, the town is known for being haunted. The most common ghost reported is said to be Lucy Bell King Lane. When Lucy was 10 years old, she moved with her family to Bismarck, which overlooks Calico. Lucy married John Robert Lane when she was 18, and together they opened a general store in Calico. In 1899, Lucy and John left Calico, but returned in 1960 back to their old store. The couple then moved to the old courthouse, which was also a post office. John died in 1934, but Lucy continued to live in the house until she died in 1967. Today, their home is a museum dedicated to their lives. Lucy is reported to still be seen in her old home and store, and is most often seen walking back and forth between the two. She is usually wearing a full-length black lace dress. It is also reported that in Lucy's home, the pictures remove themselves from the walls, and her favorite rocking chair will rock by itself. Clerks at the store reported hearing unexplainable noises and seeing movement out of the corner of their eye. Even though Lucy is the most often reported spirit in Calico, she is not alone. Several people have also reported seeing a young girl at the schoolhouse who waves at people when they walk by. There is also another child who likes to pinch people's ankles, as well as red lights that float around the schoolhouse. While visiting Calico, one couple reported they had taken pictures of a woman in period clothing who had told them she was Margaret Oliver, the last school teacher in Calico. When the couple returned home and looked over their pictures, the woman did not appear in any of them. When they inquired about the woman, they were told there wasn't any staff working at the schoolhouse at the time they were there. The Maggie Mine is one of dozens of mines found in the hills around town. The 1,000 feet of tunnels is open to the public to explore. There have been many paranormal experiences reported here. People have reported random cold spots and the feeling of their hair standing up, usually in the section of the mine that the Malachi brothers made their home. Close to the mine is the Hanks Hotel, where people have reported feeling tugging on their clothes and hands, which has been attributed to two young children who were reported to wander the boardwalk outside of the hotel. The last marshal of Calico is also reported to interact with visitors on the boardwalk. At the Calico Corral, the sounds of celebration are often heard coming from the barn. Lil's Saloon is one of the first buildings in Calico. It is reported often that the sounds of piano and large crowds are heard coming from here when the building is empty. Not all the spirits in Calico are people. There is also a mail carrying dog named Dorsey seen near the cemetery and print shop. In 1883, Postmaster Jim Stacy found and adopted Dorsey. It wasn't long, and Dorsey started carrying the mail between Calico and Bismarck. The spirits of Calico don't seem malicious, so if you're interested in haunted towns, visiting Calico Ghost Town would be a great idea. This beautiful historic concrete bridge is known as the Colorado Street Bridge and spans 1,467 feet across the Arroyo Seco, a deep canyon that links San Gabriel Mountains to the Los Angeles River, and oftentimes is incorrectly called the Arroyo Seco Bridge because of the intermittent stream in the area. When the bridge was first constructed, travelers were awed by the majestic causeway, but things soon started to take a more sinister turn when people began jumping to their deaths from the 150-foot bridge. Within 10 years, the Colorado Street Bridge became known by locals as Suicide Bridge. The first tragedy struck even before construction was completed. It is reported that one of the construction workers fell off the bridge and went headfirst into a vat of wet concrete. The other workers assumed they couldn't save him in time and left his body in the quick-drying cement. The construction worker is just one of many rumored to haunt the bridge. On November 16, 1919, the first suicide occurred at Colorado Street Bridge, shortly followed by many others, especially during the Great Depression. It has been estimated that over 100 people have taken their lives here. One of the most famous stories from the bridge happened on May 1st, 1937, when a desperate mother threw her baby over the side and then jumped to her death. The mother died, but the child survived. Evidently, the mother tossed the baby into the nearby trees, where she was later recovered from the thick branches. There are many reports of other spirits roaming the Colorado Street Bridge, as well as the canyon below. Reports include unexplainable screams, a spectral man wearing wired rimmed glasses, and a woman in a long flowing robe who jumps from the parapets, then vanishes. By the 1980s, the historic bridge fell into disrepair. After the 1989 earthquake, the bridge was deemed unsafe and closed. After extensive repairs, the Colorado Street Bridge reopened in 1993, completely restored back to its original condition with suicide prevention rails added. Although suicides have decreased here through the years, it is reported that the spirits still remain. Along the Nevada border in Northern California is an old abandoned mining town called Bodie, which is now a state historic park. Bodie was established around the Bunker Hill mine in 1861 by William S. Bodie, who discovered gold in the area in 1859. For many years, it was a seedy town with all kinds of illicit businesses. Despite the hardships, harsh winters, and disastrous fire, Bodie had a population of about 10,000 people in 1879. Like all other mining towns, eventually the gold began to dry up and people started leaving. After a fire that burned 95% of the town in 1932, only 6 people remained. Here is where things really start to get interesting. One of the men that remained in Bodie shot and killed his wife. Because there wasn't much in the way of law here, the other men took it upon themselves to exact justice and killed the murderer. Soon after, those who sought justice for the wife were visited by the ghost of the murderer until they all died from a strange illness. By the 1940s, Bodie was a complete ghost town. According to legends, if anyone takes anything from the town, they will be cursed with bad luck until the item is returned. The spirits of Bodie that remain really like their stuff and will curse anyone who tries to take anything from them. Many people have tried and all have returned the items, saying it gave them bad luck. According to the park rangers, there are many different spirits that haunt the remaining buildings. Some are reported to be kind, while others vengeful. It is reported that many of the spirits are residents who faced an untimely death and refused to leave their homes, and others are of children who were taken too soon from this world. The San Lucia mountain range is a place of undeniable natural beauty and history. It has also been said to be the haunt of shadow beings that stand and observe our world from afar. The Dark Watchers are reported to stand between 7 and 15 feet tall, dressed in all black with flowing cloaks, wide-brimmed hats, and walking sticks. Their faces are never seen and they are always silent, usually seen at a distance up on ridges silhouetted against the darkening twilight sky around dusk or dawn. They quietly stand surveying their domain for an unknown purpose, often vanishing in the blink of an eye, especially if noticed or someone gets too close to them. These shadow figures have been reported for centuries and traced back to the native Chumash tribe of California, who referred to them as the Old Ones. Early Spanish explorers and Mexican ranchers also knew of them and called them the Los Vigilantes Oscuros. They were also seen by early explorers and soldiers who described the unsettling experience of being observed from them from high cliffs above. The beings have also been mentioned in countless literary references and reports as well. Sometime in the mid-1960s, there was a sighting of a dark watcher by a high school teacher who was out hiking. While walking the trail, he claimed to see a tall, dark figure looming on the ridge. He reported that the figure seemed to be just standing there contemplating the scenery. The hiker called out to the figure, and instantly the entity dissolved from sight like it was never there. There have also been numerous reports of mysterious shadow figures for years, with the most recent sighting being in 2008. Are the sightings just illusions or hallucinations? If it is, why is it just happening on this mountain range? Some have claimed the sightings are due to the presence of infrasound signals in the area, which can be caused by natural processes like the wind going along the rocks, and also can have strange effects on the human psyche. If so, again, why here and why so many consistent reports in the appearance and behavior? Are the beings supernatural or interdimensional? It's hard to tell, and we may never know. Until then, the Dark Watchers remain a mystery that really capture the imagination. Los Coches Adobe sits abandoned alongside Highway 101 in Soledad. Originally built as a ranchero in 1843, Los Coches' most continual contribution to the area was as a Wells Fargo station agent office, post office, stagecoach stops, and an inn. Between 1854 and 1868, it became a popular inn and stagecoach stop for the passengers of the Bixby Overland Stage between San Francisco and Los Angeles. On December 20th, 1872, the railroad finally reached Soledad, connecting the area to San Francisco and creating an important stopover for travelers. Soledad was the end of the railroad and even had a turntable located at the end of town where the train would be turned around for its return trip. As time went on, the Adobe became a popular vacation adventure. By the mid-20th century, it was donated to the state of California and turned into a popular rest stop, complete with campgrounds for motorists along the scenic Highway 101. The rest stop closed in the 1980s and was transferred to the city. As of 2008, there are plans to rehabilitate the Adobe. There are many reports of spirits that still roam the Adobe. The most popular story is from the mining days. It is said that a group of 30 miners got trapped underground and died. Their screams can still be heard. Other ghosts include a spectral couple holding hands, an inmate who escaped the nearby Soledad Correctional Facility, and a woman in black who murdered the miners looking for a good time, robbing them and dumping their bodies in the well.